Hello. Hello, hello. Hi. Hi, Quakey. Pink stuff. How are you guys this evening? We're going to talk about how to be even healthier than we already are. You know, following Dr. Randall's Randall Wellness. Have you been Randallized yet? So you can do that. Call me on telemedicine and we'll get your answers for you. I'm Dr. Gail Randall. I'm author of Soul Doctoring, Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet. I'm the host of Soul Stories, a wonderful podcast, which we now just got our 5,000th download, which is pretty good in just a little over a year. So we really focus on raising consciousness on that show and have people from all walks of life, but we tend to end up talking about raising consciousness and all coming together as one. So I really love that because that's why I did it in the first place. So it's a great show. You can get it on all podcast stations. It's called Soul Stories. And you can also find it on my website. You can also find it on my new YouTube channel. Yeah, I have a new YouTube channel which has all my podcasts, both prior to us doing video. Now we're doing video, and also my Instagram TVs, and also my archives from way back when I was on national television a lot, before we had YouTube, before we had all these things. So check out that YouTube. It's just go to my website. Go to the very bottom where it has the little logos, and it'll have YouTube there. Click on it and you'll go right into the program. But be sure to subscribe, because you don't get to see as much content if you don't subscribe. So when you go to watch that YouTube, once you subscribe once, you're done. You don't have to do it after that. So check it out. Okay. So today we're going to talk about being your own blue zone. How to add years and grow younger. You know, I have a birthday coming up, and you might find it hard to believe, but I find it hard to believe. I'm going to be 70, and I haven't done any plastic surgery or anything like that, not yet. I'm not saying I don't approve of it, or I don't care if other people do it, but thank God I haven't needed it yet, so I'm doing okay. And I think a lot of it is because I do treat myself like my own blue zone. So let's talk about what that means, what goes into that. I did send an outline on the Instagram when I was advertising this talk. First of all, you got to eat well. Everybody knows you got to eat well. But what does that actually mean to you? So we're going to unpack that. And it should be organic. It should be mostly, if not all, 100% organic. And it should be regenerative. And it should be mostly plants. And it does make a difference, actually. It really does. And if you are going to eat meat, make sure it's regenerative meat. So what's the difference between regenerative meat and conventional meat? So I buy my meat at the grocery store, and it says it's grass-fed and hormone-free. Can you trust that? Not always. A lot of times they just feed them grass at the end, and they still grow the crops, which they feed the chemicals to feed the cows that are in the feedlot, which then the cows accumulate. Any animal would accumulate these toxins, glyphosates, other toxins, hormones, in their muscle tissue, particularly in the fat. And then we feed them to people. And it's those toxins that cause a lot of disruption in our health. It causes anything inflammatory. You might, emission, arthritis, cancer is inflammatory, heart disease, cognitive decline, kidney disease, all of these things root from inflammation. And most inflammation roots from conventionally grown meat or sugar and high fructose corn syrup. So those are the things we don't want in our blue zone. And if we feel like we really need to eat animals, you need to eat regenerative meat, regeneratively raised animals. And how do they do that? My favorite is Blue Nest beef, because they raise the cattle like the buffalo roamed. When the buffalo roamed through here, I still think I'm in Nebraska, when they roamed through the plains states, when there were millions and millions of buffalo, they came once a year. And as they came through, of course, the predators followed them. And as the predators followed them, it caused them to change their grazing position because they wanted to get away from the predators, right? So, and by doing so, they would leave the grass they were eating. They would go to another place where there was grass. The grass they left, they didn't get a chance to eat it more than halfway down, which is actually beneficial. Nature knows what it's doing. So that grass grows stronger and ends up having more phytochemicals, more phytonutrients in it than as if you let them stay there, which is traditional grazing, and eat that grass all the way to the ground. Then you don't end up with healthy grass, you don't end up with healthy animals. But if they only eat it part way down, and then they move them. So that's what they do with regenerative ranching. They mimic, that biomimicry, the predator-prey relationship. So after they've spent a certain amount of time on a certain hectare of land, they go in and they move them. They say, okay, now you got to go eat over there. And they don't spend too much time on any one hectare and don't make it back to the original place for about a year. Just like the buffalo that come through every year. And it ends up with an incredibly clean product, if you want to call it that, or it's certainly happy cows and happy chickens and the other animals that travel with them, and it's they're not only happy, but they're full of phytonutrients, very healthy for you. So if you're a meat person, I still wouldn't personally recommend more than maybe 3 times a week, but that stuff's good. It's really good for you. I don't choose it because there's other reasons I don't eat meat. So that's how to choose. And regenerative plants. Well, what are regenerative plants? Well, it's when you take from a garden, just like in the beginning, and you give back. That's regenerative. Okay? If you just take and you don't give anything back, that's not sustainable, that's not regenerative. So, regenerative is cyclic. It's a give and take situation, whether it be plants or animals. And you want the food to be locally sourced, that's part of being regenerative. You want the food to be, meaning not very far away from your table. There's a good site on Instagram. I see a lot of you follow the Instagram. It's called Farm Fresh to You, but there are others. I mean, these farmers markets that come, they're great. They may not be, ask them, talk to those people, because oftentimes they are fully organic. They just can't call themselves that yet because there may be some time constraint or something, because they have to be for a certain period of time, not next to land that might even have just pollen that's blowing over from a non-organic crop. That's not even allowed, but they may have, in essence, an organic product, and so you want to talk to them, you can get it for a little better price if that's an issue for you. And they're local. You want to buy food that has the least number of miles on it. That's how they think about it. And any product, for that matter, clothes, whatever you buy should be local, but especially food. And we have a little place right across the street from me here in Malibu that does, small fry kind of farming. I got a little place right in my backyard where I do it. So that's regenerative. And if it's very close, it's very close to your table. How long does it take to get from the ground to your table? The closer, the better. The more regenerative, the more earth-friendly it is. And that's what we're all aiming for now. And like in my book, I talk about, we need friendly answers to these very difficult questions we're facing right now, with the health crisis, the planetary crisis, the climate change, and so forth and so on. And most people just go, oh my God, I'm just one small person. I can't do anything. Don't ever count yourself out. Don't ever, every single person is consequential. Every single person. And if you put all those persons together, I have friends, Kelly and Matt Gurman, who do a song about crayons, how when you put all the colors of the crayons together, we're so much stronger, right? So you take one crayon and they snap, right? You've heard your kids using those crayons and you hear this snap, snap. You know what that is. Crayons are breaking. Put a whole bunch of those crayons together in your hands like you got a log of crayons. Now try to break it. It's very strong. When we're all together, we are very strong. And so that's the way we want to be. So, like a bundle of wood or a bundle of crayons, or we are all one. I was having a conversation with a person I care deeply about the other day, and, about things, and he said, something like, whose side are you on? And I said, well, I don't really see it as sides. What I see is there are no sides. That we're all one. And even if we don't get along, and even if we're having an issue with each other, that's just a function of diversity. Diversity brings unity. And we're all different, and but it really doesn't matter what color we are. It really doesn't matter what religion we are. It really doesn't matter what country we come from. It doesn't really matter what language we speak, or if we're gay, or if we're bisexual, if we're transsexual, if we're, no matter what we are, we're human. And together we are humanity. It's one humanity, one planet. That's where the strength is. But don't think there won't be disagreements. Don't think there won't be diversity. Actually, the more diversity there is, and you can look at this in nature, the stronger it is. Like gardens, for instance, they have this type of a garden that comes from South America, or originally the Huatil people. Remember Quetzalcoatl and all those guys, and they would take seeds, and they would take a fairly big plot of land, but not huge, and just let them go. Just let them go and let them grow all together. And those gardens, those very diverse gardens with everything all fluffy and with the way I like it, bunched together, grow much better and produce at a much higher rate than traditionally tilled land and plowed in between with all the weeds removed with chemicals and stuff like that. They're way healthier, and number one, and they produce more food. These milpa gardens, MILPA they're called, produce more food than the highly manicured tilled. The tilled land is a deal because, like in my garden, we don't till per se. You just barely razor cut the ground. It's these are razors. They have these discs, and they razor cut the ground, and it drops the seeds in, and things grow much better than if you dig up the entire ground, release the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It's the biggest, one of the biggest, it is actually equivalent to all the combustion engines together, is what's released when you plow the land every spring. So it should be happening about now. The carbon in the atmosphere is increasing exponentially near these farms that till. If you go to a no-till system, you're not adding carbon to the atmosphere. As a matter, and you go to, the milpa kind of garden pulls down carbon from the atmosphere, draws it down, fixes nitrogen, the plants are healthier, and you're not using chemicals. That's what we need to move towards throughout the planet, and for sure in the United States. We've got the know-how, we understand it. And we got to produce food for our children, for the people that come after us, to leave a legacy here on this planet. And that's how you're going to do it, a no-till system. So that's a nutshell about food. And then you need to exercise. Do you think back in the day when we first evolved, people went to their healers, and the healers said, you got to go run around the pasture here or whatever? No, it was just something that came to them naturally. They would go out and play and run and, maybe chase after animals if that's what they were doing. And, but then also just, hunting food that you picking food that grows on trees, picking berries that grows on bushes. That's all exercise. Exercise frequently. And if you feel like, well, you can't, you're too old, you're too feeble. No one is too old or feeble to exercise. If you can't go outside and run, I understand. I mean, I can't even do that right now since my hospitalization, but I do Pilates and I do other things. I go to the gym, I ride my horse, I do what I can. And you want to focus on strength, balance, and endurance. Those three things: strength, balance, and endurance. A good thing that can sum up all those things and give you an extra added potion of relaxation is yoga. Because yoga stimulates your autonomic nervous system in a good way. It stimulates the sympathetic, the parasympathetic, which is the relaxing part of your autonomic nervous system through the vagus nerve. So when this big nerve that flows all the way from your brain down the center of your body gets activated in a good way, that's good for you. If you stimulate that vagus nerve to send back relaxing messages, to send out relaxing messages to your body, you lower your flight or fight neurotransmitters, you lower your heart rate, you lower your blood pressure, you slow down your brain waves, and you create a more healthful situation. I have several patients right now that do all this. They eat organic, they eat regenerative, they exercise frequently, emphasizing strength, balance, and endurance. But what they're not doing or accomplishing is stimulating that vagal nerve to where they're getting a sense of relaxation. Why? Because they're anxious, they're worried, and I can understand that after coming through a couple years of COVID, or how many years has it been, and I understand that. But you've got to come to a place where you're going to integrate that, because we're not having the big problem right now, and we need to come to a place where we can lower our cortisol levels, because it's the cortisol levels that destroy your brain. Like I said, you can eat perfect, you can exercise perfect, but if you're not lowering your cortisol levels, you're not making it. And then you're going to notice a decrease in your short-term memory and things like that. And if you can do that, and how are you going to do that? I suggest several ways. Simply breathing, the Randall way, I call it. And it's simple, it's easy. If you don't get it, DM me and I'll have my staff send you a copy. But you breathe in through your nose for a count of 5. Then you get in a relaxed place in your body. So you breathe in 4, 5, and you breathe out through your mouth for a count of 5. Actually, I like breathing in for 5 and out for 6. So when you breathe the in, you count to 5. And the counting is essential because it keeps your brain busy. Because whatever you're thinking about that's making that cortisol go high is not productive. But when you're just counting, it's not gonna cause a problem. So breathe in 3, 4, 5. Breathe out through your mouth 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in through your nose, allowing your stomach to rise. Out through your mouth, allowing your stomach to fall. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And then you just keep up that rhythm. See, I'm already relaxing because my body's expecting it. Here it comes. So you just keep that rhythm going and doing the breathing, allowing the stomach to rise and fall like that. And once you get really good at it, you can insert a visualization. Like, what is the most relaxing place you ever went? I remember one place I went in Maryland on the beach, and the beach was white, and the waves were smooth. And sometimes I think of that place, or maybe someplace in the forest, or maybe it's just your backyard, or maybe it's your dog. But whatever it is, it needs to relax you. So do that breathing, and then think of a relaxing place at the same time. But don't let go of the counting, because it keeps your brain occupied so you don't think of stuff that bothers you. So you can also pray. Some of you are spiritual people, I know, and praying is very relaxing. If you have a favorite prayer, that's a good way to go, because the repetition of the prayer. If you don't have a favorite prayer, I would recommend going on Howard Will's website. That's Wills. He's a healer in Maui. Excuse me. And he is an amazing healer. And he does a lot of his healing through what he calls his transformational prayers. And they are amazing. And he has a whole set of prayers that he gives away on his website, howardwills.com. And he suggests you read through those prayers, and you do like a set of 3, like you go through it 3 times. And once you've gone through all those prayers 3 times, you're pretty relaxed, I'll tell you that. And not only that, you've cleared a lot of energy. So check it out and see what you think. And then, of course, there's meditation. And a lot of you are expert meditators, and you just get into your meditation, format and go. So, you could either do the 5 minutes of breathing, 10 minutes of breathing. Once you've practiced, even 5 minutes can cause all those physiologic changes that I was mentioning. 5 minutes of breathing can be effective chemically to reduce your cortisol, reduce your heart rate, reduce your blood pressure, all those things. And it's essential. It's essential for life. Otherwise, you're going to start tearing down your brain, tearing down your nervous system, and it's phenomenal how strong emotion can be in the body. We talked about some of this last week. We talked about Pocket Full of Pearls, which I gave you a lot of information last week about how to untangle the challenges to your unfolding soul. And I called it Pocket Full of Pearls. So if you didn't listen to that, I suggest you do, because it's going to be very helpful for your evolution, for your health, to know those things. And you can listen to that one several times. There's a lot of information in it from last week. You can recognize it because I have my glasses on. So what else? What else makes us stay healthy? What else puts us into the blue zone kind of state? Well, having a good attitude. And that's something you got to work on, because, if there's a lot of negative stuff going on around on the planet, and there tends to be lately, you can either become part of that, or you can choose to point your sacred arrow in a sacred direction and choose to go in a positive direction. I'm not for war. I'm not for the kind of stuff that's going on. But, my teacher, Joseph Ralph, once taught me, or said to me, if you fight fire with fire, you're just going to burn the whole place down. That makes sense. So if somebody's coming at us with fire and negativity and hate, and we fire back the same thing, it's not going to help anything. That's not going to cure anything. That's not going to resolve anything. But if you say, no, I choose to point my arrow in a sacred direction over here, and when you say to me, I hate you, I say, you like me? That's good. I like me. Like me? That's good. I like me. And I was taught that by my karate martial arts teacher, Takayuki Kubota, who was the founder of IKA and is an amazing guy. And he definitely subscribes to the blue zone situation. I don't know how old he is, in his 80s or 90s now. And he's very positive and always smiling and bouncing around, and because he doesn't take things personally. So don't take things personally. If somebody doesn't like you, that's really their problem. That's not your problem. And, it's better to surround yourself with people that you do like, that do like you. And just pray for those people that need help in that regard, because they're going to be a lot healthier when they can change it. So have a good attitude, stay positive, don't take things personally. It's not aimed at you in the first place. That person that came up to you and said they didn't like you, who knows what's going on with them? Like I always make a joke out of, say, maybe they have a hemorrhoid. Because that would make you crazy and be painful and make you crabby. So stay positive. If more and more people can be positive, it changes the energy. Changes the energy in the room. Changes the energy on the planet. Changes the energy. So that's what we want to try to do. We want to try to do it together. So the other thing is what is having a meaning and purpose in your life is so important. So very, very important. You know, if you think you're here and you're not here for any purpose, that sure leaves you flat. You know, I know some people that they feel that they've been ignoring their meaning and purpose, and they're not happy campers. And all I can say to those people is stop ignoring your meaning and purpose. You know, that we're put here. We come here to serve other people. So we all have that in common. When we serve other souls, we good things happen to our chemistry. Our T cells raise up, our brain gets happier, our beneficial neurotransmitters increase in our brain and in our bodies. And so, you know, being of service is a happy thing, and it's been measured. If you do random acts of kindness, I don't know how they measure random, but it increases your neurochemistry. It increases your neurochemistry. It increases your immunity. So that's pretty amazing. And you know, same thing with compassion and empathy. When you're compassionate and empathy to another, it makes you healthier as well as them. So remember that. Have a sense of gratitude. You know, I know people, I know patients, they just said, oh my God, I've just been suffering for 2-3 years because I can't even go out of my house. I understand that. It's tough, but it doesn't mean you can't connect with other people. We have these things called phones, and now we have these things called cell phones, which can be too much. It can take over too much. But if you connect with family and friends, whether it be on the phone, whether it be on FaceTime, you know, whether it be, you know, on any of those Zoom, any of those technologies, it does help. It really does. And a lot of people do groups now. Like there are a lot of women that do groups on, and you can find those. So not that men can't, I'm sure they probably can. I just, being a woman, I'm aware of the women's ones, but I know a lot of women teachers that are now doing groups. Michelle Herbert is one. She does meditations online, very successful and helpful for people. Another woman named Connie Kaplan, who was one of my original dream teachers, teaches dreaming, called the Invisible Garment online, and that's really fun stuff too, so you can look those up. Connie Kaplan with the Invisible Garment, Michelle Herbert with her meditation groups, and there's a new one I got to add to that group, Meg Hepner, and I'm featuring her right now on my podcast. And she's a life coach. She's an amazing gal, and you know, she feels like she's here to help people see things in a different way, and that's what she does. And she runs a lot of great groups. So Meg, Heppner, and you can find that on my Instagram at Dr. Gail Randall. So be thankful for what we do have. Be thankful for what you do have. If you start getting into this negative mode, you don't have this, you don't have that, you have all these things you were supposed to do that you haven't done, you know, you got to give yourself a break. You know, you'll get there. You got to create an action plan so that you get to those things that you feel that you haven't gotten to, so you can feel satisfied. I mean, most of these people I'm talking about have helped other people extraordinarily, but they need to help themselves too. And that's why I tell people with compassion, if you're not giving compassion inwardly, you're not doing it completely right. You've got to not only give compassion to your best friend, you've got to give compassion to your best friend, which is you. and it changes everything. It changes everything. The inward flow of compassion is wonderful energy, and I highly recommend it. And then community. You've got to honor your community. You've got to be involved with community. If you haven't already joined some kind of group or been involved with community, whether it be through your church or whatever, these things can be found pretty easily. Everybody needs community. Everybody needs friends. And it's proven that if you have a good sense of community, you live a healthier, longer life. And all these things I've mentioned so far are, guess what? Factors that are found in blue zones. I'm going to get a little more specific if you hang in there with me, but anyway. So we already talked about compassion and empathy. We talked about the pocket full of pearls. And then there's certain supplements that are aimed at inflammation that I recommend everybody take. There's a certain kind of water-soluble curcumin. Why? Because it gets to your whole system instead of just staying in your gut. And we all go or get some sort of disease, chronic disease, from some sort of inflammation. So I recommend a water-soluble type curcumin. So try to find that, or you can find it through me. I have access to all these things. You know, I used to say fish oil, but now I don't say fish oil, and I saw something else that supported my theory and science on that today, or was it yesterday, that everything in the ocean is toxic now, which is very sad. But it can get better if we, number one, outlaw single-use plastics. We just have to, because it's causing nanoplastics to be present, omnipresent in our climate, not just in the water, but everywhere, in the food, in the water, in our bodies, in the air we breathe. And what loves to ride on those nanoplastics are the toxins of the planet. So there's nothing that comes from the ocean. I suppose there might be some clean areas. I don't know where they are or anything about that, but I do know that the pretty pervasive, the ocean is toxic. And until we stop fishing with those gigantic nets on a daily basis that drop enough plastic nets that can encircle the earth 500 times, that's where a lot of the plastic comes from. And until we eliminate single-use plastics, we're not going to get rid of these nanoplastics in the water, and the fish are going to die, and we can't have an ocean without fish. You know, the very swimming motion of the fish. Remember Dory? Remember Dory in Nemo? Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Yeah. Well, she's right. I just thought it was a joke. But if you don't have that motion of the fish, the swimming motion of the fish, it doesn't keep the carbon dioxide beds buried in the ocean. And then what? They're released into the atmosphere and add more to the carbon debt. So we have got to get these plastics under control. And we need our fish. So we just need to stop fishing for a while and get rid of those nets, and the ocean will come back. And that was shown in COVID 2020. Watch David Attenborough's documentary called The Year the World Changed. And it sure did. Everything came back. Even areas that were completely devastated returned. Even places where species were extinct, they returned. And the whales began to talk to each other in new languages, simply because they could hear each other, because there weren't any container ships, there weren't these cruise ships that were causing them not to be able to communicate or hear or know each other were there. But in that year, 2020, they did. And they developed new languages. so they could talk to each other. The cheetahs returned in Africa because the babies could hear the mothers crying for them to come get the food. So all of these amazing things, the little baby turtles made it into the ocean for the first time in decades because the people weren't in the way on the beach. Now, we're smart enough. We can come up with lots of ways to work that. We can say, okay, we're going to close the beaches 2 hours earlier so that the turtles can have their time together, so the whales can talk to each other. I mean, these are not hard subjects. It's just getting people to make those kind of rules. But the good news is a lot of it we can do ourselves. We can just start doing it. We can come together as a people, as a community, and start doing it. So that's what we need to do. And I was talking about fish, so I want to get to this point. I now found these companies that make the only reason fish have omega-3s in them, which we need because we cannot make in our bodies, is because they eat algae. And so these brilliant people, I wish I would have thought of it, have taken the algae beds and moved them to the desert, where they now grow these farms that are completely toxin-free organic algae. So we have algae oil that's organic, that's just as good, if not better for us than fish oil, because it's easier to absorb. So that's a pearl right there. So no fish oil. And then we need, so I was talking about supplements we really need for the blue zone, and supplements that they do have a lot in the blue zone. So they have a lot of, they did show that curcumin was one of them. And I said I had a little upgrade on that, that's water soluble. They say fish oil, but I don't say fish oil for the reason I explained. And polyphenols, which are very, very, very potent antioxidants that comes primarily from olive oil. And you have to have two things here. First, you have to have an organically raised olive. So if the olives are organic, the ground, the soil that they were grown in has microbes in it. Otherwise, there are no polyphenols. Okay, so you need microbes, you need probiotics, if you will, in your soil, in your organic soil. You know, one handful of organic soil has more microbes than people that ever existed on the planet. I love those little facts. But anyway, so that's how you get to the polyphenols. I love olive oil, and everybody says, oh, it burns when Dr. Randall invented something. If you use olive oil to cook with, which I do, I add a little avocado oil, and it raises the burning temperature. I don't ever burn olive oil in my kitchen, and it doesn't take much. So that's an avocado oil is good for you too, but it doesn't have the polyphenols. You need the polyphenols, only come from olive oil. So, but also the other kicker on the other side is you need the right bugs in your gut for you to be able to break down those polyphenols, which are very large molecules, to be absorbed through your gut, get into your bloodstream, go to where they're supposed to do it, particularly your brain. So you need bugs in the soil, you need bugs in you. You know, if we put as much attention on the bugs, you know, the good bugs in the soil and in us, we wouldn't need a lot of these big pharma medications. Also, CoQ10 is a good one to have in your regimen if you want to have a blue zone type existence. Alpha lipoic acid because CoQ10, alpha lipoic acid, and greens are a big deal. Deep green leafy vegetables, again, all organic, because those are the molecules that drive the electrons along in your electron chain in your mitochondria. Mitochondria are little things, they almost look like bacteria, that live in every single cell that create energy. The happier your mitochondria are, the happier your muscles are, the happier you are, the happier your brain is. So you want CoQ10, you want alpha lipoic acid, you want resveratrol, which comes again from the Mediterranean diet, also the Blue Zone diet, grapes and things, and you want the polyphenols. So to drive those electrons along in those mitochondria, you need the CoQ10, the alpha lipoic, the deep green leafy vegetables, and the resveratrol, and B vitamins also. Okay, so that's the outline, and also, a lot of us are not under 30 anymore, and sometimes bioidentical hormones are appropriate and can help with longevity and adding years and growing younger. So, just a little bit more about, how much time do I have? Oh, wow. I already went 45 minutes. Okay. Just specifically, what are blue zones? Do y'all know what blue zones are? No volunteers? Blue zones are specific areas, and there's about 5 of them, I think. Couple in Italy. One is in Loma Linda, California, actually. And they're areas where people routinely live to be over 100 years old. That's typically what people refer to as blue zones. But not only are they living to be over 100, but they're healthy. They're healthy, and they're active, and they're very community-based, as we referred to before. They're very close people with each other. They're grateful for what they have. And I'm going to visit all the blue zones one day, and I'm going to take you with me. That'll be fun. So, there's also a place in, there's a couple places, like I said, in Italy. And there's another one in Okinawa, Japan. And there's another one in Nicoya Peninsula in Italy, and there's another in Greece, and one in Costa Rica as well. So that's pretty interesting. The one in the United States, in Loma Linda, most of the population are Seventh-day Adventists, and they are known to be vegetarian, mostly, I'm pretty sure. So that might speak to what I'm speaking to as well. But one other thing they have in common is a lot of them are sort of isolated from the rest of the population. So they're very close within themselves, but they don't have, a large population on a large piece of land kind of thing. They're either like on an island or in a mountain, although not the Loma Linda one. It's just maybe that's the population, the Seventh Day. But it's very interesting because I did these Venn diagrams to figure out what do they all have in common. Well, one of them was the supplements that I mentioned a little while ago. And the other one is they really have this sense of community and friendship. And whether or not they're, like, say, boyfriend or girlfriend or girlfriend and girlfriend or whatever, they walk around with their arms around each other on a regular basis, or holding arms, or locking arms. And it's very sweet, really, and they don't smoke. They engage in moderate physical activity on a pretty much of a daily basis. They don't have a gym because they're constantly moving, working, gardening, and doing stuff outside or taking walks with their friends. So, remember I said just getting out and moving around is good. The women work alongside the men, but no one outworks another. And the other thing I thought was really cool that they all have in common is a very powerful matriarchal type woman influence in their societies. So women are strong, is a good way to put it. They have strong women. And so I thought that was interesting. Blue zoners mostly eat plant-based, like I implied, but they eat plentiful portions of whole grains, legumes, seeds, nuts, olive oil. You know, it's a Mediterranean-like diet, what I call a modified Mediterranean-like diet, which doesn't really include much meat. If it does, you know, it would be mostly fish, but that's had to change recently. Maybe a little poultry, but mostly plant-based. The other thing is the number of calories that they eat is just sort of naturally lower than what we take. Like we take between 2,000 and 2,500 a day, and they're more around like 1,800. So maybe there's something to that. They first, when they found these blue zones, they looked and looked and looked for like some herb that they would have in common, like a fountain of youth kind of herb, or water or mineral in the water or something like that. But they really didn't find anything. I think it's more activity, attitude, and the qualities that we talked about in the beginning, gratitude, and some of those nutrients that I mentioned actually lengthen telomeres. Telomeres are little things on the ends of your chromosomes which have been associated with a longer life. So people they're little caps, you know, your chromosomes like little X's, and on the ends are these little caps. And people that have longer little caps on the end of their chromosomes live longer and healthier. And it's said that people that consume larger amounts of really pure resveratrol have that advantage in the telomere growth. So that's something you can do yourself. And I mentioned that in the beginning. So I just love this stuff, and because it's not really hard. People think it's hard, but it isn't. It's easy. You know, first of all, we know that body, mind, spirit, and soul are key. And, you know, we know that meaning and purpose is really important. I mean, we know that from research, we know that from living, we know that from observing populations. And I just think we need to express what we know and not hold back. Because we know the sad or standard American diet is not helping, and it's responsible for the vast majority of disease in this country. And if we could all think a little bit more like these blue zoners, and if we could, you know, all have the same amount of gratitude and positive thinking and good food, you know, plant-based, non-meat, non-toxic food, and exercise, we're all going to be living over 100 if we want to. I've been exposed to a number of centenarians lately. I have a personal friend, and she's like the mother of holistic medicine. Her name is Gladys McGeary. And she was on my podcast, Soul Stories. Check that out. She's still absolutely amazing and sharp. And we had a wonderful, stimulating discussion on that Soul Stories podcast. And she's endorsed my book, which is really sweet. And she's just an amazing person. There's another one, and everybody referred to her as Mamie. And she was the mother of Turabu Betsarii, who took her back to Mississippi when she was 107 years old. She was basically flushed out of there at 7 because they were going to hang her father. You know, they're African American, and they were going. It was the whole big deal with the black migration, and just think about it, was 111 years ago, that they were forced out of Mississippi, or they were going to be hanged publicly for no good reason. And so she returned to Mississippi 100 years to the day back again to make peace with that. Now, what a soul is that? This 107-year-old lady returns to the place where she was wronged and her father was going to be killed to make peace with these hangings that were many, that actually literally changed the face of migration of black people in this country. But you know, to think of what a transcendent human that is, you know. So these long livers, they do have something to offer, and we need to listen to what they have to say, because they have many teachings that can raise us up and help us move forward as well. All right, I love you guys. Do you have any questions for me? One day you're going to have questions for me. Well, don't forget to DM me with your questions or call me. I'm doing lots of telemedicine now, if you're interested in that. And thank you all for joining me. This was a great session. Hi, Patty. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Okay, guys, I'll see you next week. Same time, same station. You can DM me, ask me questions. Love ya. Don't forget the Pocket Full of Pearls. Go back and watch that show from last week. It was awesome. Okay, bye.